I'm Aryeh Schwartz, and welcome to the WNBAinsidr Show. This episode, we have a special guest, Ben Dull, one of the top WNBA writers. This episode, we have a special guest, Ben Dull, one of the top WNBA writers out there, and we're going to be specifically looking at a recent article he had that came out in High Post Hoops with 18 bold predictions for the season. As always, if you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. Ben, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week, and I know some elements of all the happenings in the W are going to come up on this episode, but you had an amazing article that came out very recently, 18 bold predictions, or not so bold predictions, if you will, for the 2019 WNBA season, and a few of them really stood out to me. First things first, I want to enter Ben Dull's mind of how you kind of outlined, how did you attack this article, because 18 is almost selling it short.
Yeah, I did one of these last season too, and I just kind of, over the course of a couple of days, and you just kind of sat down and kind of like ran through a lot of stuff that happened last season, and kind of like the stuff that you might gloss over, like a player that missed 4 games, and those kind of things, and then just write down the rosters, like what seemed like the interesting positional battles, and just like what are the stories of this season going to be? And as just as that kind of materialized, you kind of just start to throw stuff at the wall, and just kind of what's going to happen, and try to have some fun with it too.
Well, yeah, and something that definitely stuck out to me when I was reading through it, my first time reading it, was, and I don't think this is like crazy bold, but it is pretty bold, especially with a lot of stuff that's been going on recently. You say both the Chicago Sky and the Dallas Wings are going to make the playoffs. Let's talk with the Sky. Why do you think so? And how is this team going to combat the lack of defense?
Well, first, I guess like the main rationale for that was just I feel like there's kind of a drop off after the teams I really consider to be the bold, surefire title contenders, Atlanta, Connecticut, Vegas, LA, Phoenix, and Washington. And then after that, I don't feel like any of those teams are obviously one's a clear cut above the other. So I feel like, more or less those teams are kind of all going to be fighting it out for those last few spots. And I think looking at at that stage when we're talking about just try to get in, I think you really just have to focus, even more so maybe than on the weaknesses. What are these teams really good at, and how much can those strengths carry them? And with Chicago, we're all waiting to see how the defense works, but they're gonna be able to score, and if you can score, on a given night you get hot, you put a lot of pressure on people to stop you and to keep up with you. It's just there's a little bit of faith to it, but I think your offense can carry you to enough wins if they take better care of the ball. They're going to be able to really put a lot of pressure on people to keep up with them.
So I need to, not to be a jerk, but how concerned are you with the lack of scoring that we have seen in their preseason games?
Not at all. I mean, they don't have their full team. It's just, I don't know. And we obviously can't just pull these up on League Pass. I'm not going to put a ton of stock to much preseason stuff at all. I'd like to see some of these fringe rookies that are actually playing minutes. That'd be something interesting to see, just to evaluate those individual players. But I don't know. They're not I'm just kind of talk to me when they have their full team.
And what do you expect from this full team? Do you expect, I have so many question marks. I obviously you expect them to run, but to really pull out a little bit better than they did last year, because that's all it really takes to make the playoffs in this coming season, if you look at it. I guess my question to you is this going to be a team that their offense is going to strengthen their defense, or is it going to be a situation of their offense just having to play so good that it makes up for the lack of defense?
Well, yeah, I mean, 100%. It goes into your defense. I mean, especially Chicago. I mean, this isn't just like a throwaway point. Like they have to take better care of the ball. Like, I mean, I wrote about this early in the offseason. Like Courtney Vandersloot and Ali Quigley, like they each turn it over on like 30% of their pick and roll possessions. Like that's like double of like what it should be. And especially if those are live ball turnovers, you're obviously just dead. Like you're just hemorrhaging points. And if you can't, especially for a team already maybe with some question marks with their personnel, night to night, like you have to like maximize your chances to set your defense. And if you do that, you have a much better chance.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the Wings, though. Couple trades happened today. Now that you have the new Wings roster as it is, do you still stand by the Wings in your bold prediction of them making the playoffs?
I do. It's so I rattled off the six, my six contenders. So it's really, I think it's 4 for 2 spots with Seattle and Minnesota as the other ones. And I think Dallas is a little tougher. I guess like if I really had to order like 1 through 8, I'd say like Chicago as 7 and Dallas as the last one in. I mean, the tough thing to talk about is like like with Skylar Diggins-Smith coming back. It's like there's probably a number or a pretty like ballpark of like, okay, if she doesn't play at least this many games, like they probably like their chances go way down of making it. Like they just do. But like just I think at this point in the calendar, it's just like, yeah, like I'm gonna like guess like they get her for a pretty decent chunk of the season. And I think like Kayla Thornton and Aryeh Stevens, I'm just all in on that duo. Get them on the court as much as possible. You can go big, you can go small, and I think like talking about like what strengths are really going to stand out for like these teams that I think are on the fringe. I think like those two players are just like they're everywhere. They're going to help you run. They're going to get on the boards. They give them a lot of versatility on defense, which I think Brian Agler is going to really help them kind of transform that overnight. And I think that's going to kind of at least stabilize them, even if I think the offense might be a little bit more of a struggle for them early in the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know those two fringe teams that we're talking about right now, one strength is offense, one strength is defense. And I too have heard a lot of really good things about what Agler has been able to do just in the ridiculously short WNBA training camp that we have. One of the other notable things for the Wings, there's been a lot of reports about Moriah Jefferson. Now she's on the team, likely missing this season. How does that move into this next topic of Taylor Hill predictions? Because I know you spoke very highly. I think you even had one of your 18 predictions was solely about Taylor Hill.
Yeah, I think that is kind of a name that's been easy to forget about. And, like one, like it has to remember like the context, like, and like think about how we're really talking about Taylor Hill. They got her for a player in aerial powers, and there can be some disagreement on who she is a player, but Powers wasn't playing for them last year. So they turned that into a player who, before she got hurt in 2017, like Taylor Hill is going to be an all-star. And if you can get a player who can both give you a slashing element, getting the line a little bit, and can be a credible threat from three, like that's the kind of player you just have to take a chance on because there aren't a lot of them. And again, like it all starts from the fact that like Dallas turned a player that they weren't playing into like a skill set that you can't just pick up out of nowhere.
Well, talk to me about Dallas. Talk to me about their front court. What do you imagine? Obviously, there's still a lot of time to go until the season starts. What do you imagine as their front court pairing?
I'm most interested to see Thornton and Stevens and one of Glory Johnson or Imani McGee-Stafford for a lot of the time. I think that's gonna make them really scary on defense. And the rest of those names like Isabel Harrison, I think will give them a little bit of scoring and just like a little like somebody that can like face up and like drive to the basket is like it sounds like such a small thing, but it's an important element for them to have. And we'll see with those other spots where I think it's kind of it's more about specialists between Plaisance who can shoot it, George can shoot a little bit, and then obviously Gustafson is somebody that they can probably throw it to inside a little bit. But I mean, I think it's Thornton and Stevens are playing like 30 plus minutes, and between Johnson and McGee Stafford, like you're set. Those two can give you 40. So I mean, I think that those four names are going to be like the bulk of it, and everybody else will kind of see just who even makes the roster.
Front court, back court, which is the bigger concern for you going into the 2019 season for the Wings?
The back court, because I mean, I think the front court is what's going to kind of stabilize them, especially defensively, to kind of just again to keep you in games, to have the confidence, like, yeah, we can defend like a good offense without like just constantly giving up 8-0 10-0 runs. Like, we'll be able to stop people. But I mean, the backcourt is a question. Like, like Taylor Hill, like, there are definitely concerns. Like, one, she just has to prove that she's healthy, and she has to have the confidence in that knee to be the player she was before she got hurt. And obviously Mariah Jefferson, if she doesn't play at all, that hurts. Although, like, point guard has been like such a black hole for them behind Skylar. Like, at least they have a name, and like that you're going to be set there. And Agumbawale, like, we'll see. Like, I imagine it's going to be a little bit of an up and down ride. Like, there are going to be games where she just totally takes over, and there'll probably be like some 4 for 16 games.
Yeah, and we're going to have to see how the rest of the team reacts, when she kind of slips. Can they step it up? When she's, balling out of her mind, can they surround her? Something I do want to do real quick and pop away from your article for a quick moment. If you put on your thinking cap, go back to the Elena Delle Donne trade, and I want you to compare Elena Delle Donne to Washington and Liz Cambage to Vegas. Between Chicago and Dallas, which team do you think got a better return?
That's a good question.
That's kind of been the debate I've been asking people, because I think that is the most recent superstar trade that came to mind.
Yeah, I think I'd probably give a slight edge to the Delle Donne Hall. Steph Dolson. I think Steph Dolson's the best player that changed hands out of those two returns. I think Mariah Jefferson is probably like maybe a little more important, just like in the context of those teams. But I mean, if she isn't going to play at all this year, that some of that kind of goes away. And I really like Kalia Copper to it, but it's, she's kind of in a tough spot to just not get as many minutes. I would probably slightly go with the Delle Donne Hall, but I think all things considered, like, it's like you have to get something, you have to do the deal at some point. Like, I definitely don't think like people should be hating it for Vegas or for Dallas. Sorry.
Yeah, and I also think that it is, in regards to the Chicago trade, that almost felt like it happened a lot quicker. That Chicago was put in a position, and I don't want to say panic, because I don't think they necessarily panicked, but I think overall the league itself also was in a different position, and the organization was in a different position where they might not have been, if you want to call it stubborn, standing your ground, whatever it is, as much as Dallas was. Let's move on to the defending champions. The Seattle Storm have a giant injury to fill. And what is this team going to need to do to be successful? Who can fill Stewie's spot in the starting lineup? Or is it going to be by committee? What do you think?
Yeah, I did an episode of Lockdown Women's Basketball with Kevin Pelton. That'll be coming out soon, kind of talking about the lineup. And I think the assumption is that, Crystal Langhorne's going to get the first shot there. She has started for them before. There's a great piece with, talking to her in the Seattle Times, where she really opened up and talking about how, well, I've been through this before, how she kind of dealt with, kind of also following in Lauren Jackson's footsteps too, and dealing with, it's always a losing game when you're going to get compared to a player of that caliber. I mean, part of what I had in the predictions was I think Seattle will go small, just at least because you have to try something. And I think that might help them score a little bit more. The big question is just if they can defend, if they put, 3 guards, a wing, and Natasha Howard, is that like going to be enough to get any stops against somebody? But, like Langhorne, I think, she gave us a lot of really not so subtle reminders in the Phoenix series. Like I'm still a really good player, and like I can still make plays that matter against a really good team. And it'll just, we'll see how it works out between her and Howard, kind of doing that dance of, who's gonna pop, who's gonna make shots today, who's gonna get to roll.
And something that's definitely notable is positionally where Howard was in Minnesota before coming over and her flexibility in that. Obviously, the combination with Stewie, that's like a kid in a candy store, but you still do have that flexibility with Howard to move her around. In your article about 18, sorry, I'm blanking on the word now, 18 not so or very bold predictions, if you will. You talk about Jordan Canada and her being the team's second scorer, I believe you said. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, you look behind. Jewel Lloyd is the obvious name that needs to take a big step up for them. And I think, part of the rationale for why I think going small is interesting for them is because, what Jordan really gives them is somebody that can puncture a defense. And the need for that is going to skyrocket when they don't have Brianna Stewart, who was, in a lot of different ways, the player that was doing that for them. And, one of the ways for them to try to score a little bit more is if they get Sue Bird off the ball. A lot of the stuff that Dan Hughes built into their offense last year, the way they're able to, set these quick flare screens and to set people up for threes. I think, one of the things that they might be able to do is try to get Sue going and really get her threes up. And if Jordan's the one handling the ball, they can kind of have her run the show. And I think if they can play her, Bird, and Jewel Lloyd, I think they can still be really tough to guard. Although who that fifth player is still kind of a big question for them.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, and I think we're going to see a lot of excitement. So, would you be counting Seattle out this quick? I know it's easy to after the injury, but something in my mind says, all right, maybe this isn't a top championship contender, but this team still got something.
Well, I guess are we saying like counting them out as like like as a contender for like a 4 or a 5 seed, or
No,
just
all right, I'm gonna make this plain and simple. I'm talking about having any chance for a championship.
yeah. I don't have them. This will be coming out tomorrow, but I'm not going to have them in that tier of teams that's going to win a title. It's just look. They're like really dependent on Stewie. Their defense. What made it so good in large part was they had Natasha Howard and Stewie as these rangy, long, athletic forwards that anytime there was a little crease or a mistake, like they were probably going to get there to cover it up. And just that, not having both of those players, it's really going to make it tough for them on defense. And then offensively, it's just everything ran through her. Like just the fact that she's got such a high release and she's such a confident shooter, among other things that she does really well. That's what really broke you, right? Because even with Brittany Griner closing out to it, it's like she's still going to shoot it and she's still going to make those shots, and that just puts so much pressure on you. It's just I think that's a little too much for them to be able to account for.
I hear that. Now I'm going to flip the script on you. You had another article that came out on Basketball B-Ball Index talking about all the different roster cuts, projected roster cuts, all that jazz. I want you to tell me, in your personal opinion, which roster do you think is having the hardest time or has the hardest cuts to make?
Oh, I think it's definitely Phoenix. And they like what they're dealing with, and they have there's health that's at play with this. There's the aspect of you want to keep some youth around because you do kind of need to think about the future a little bit. Although I think they've done a good job of prioritizing. We need to focus on each individual season. We can't bide our time with Diana Taurasi and say, hey, we'll load up next year instead. Because Sancho Little coming back, I think that's so huge for them. If it was a 1% chance that she was going to make it back, and it's obviously better than that because she's already been cleared. But they had to bring her back, and that makes it tough because you also have Camille Little, who's another vet, and she's also on a guaranteed contract. So they can't just waive her for nothing. And are they, do they try to work out a trade, or are they going to keep her? And then that makes it really tough on these rookies: Sophie Cunningham, Brianna Turner, Erica Carter. I think it's safe to assume Alana Smith is safe, but I think Cunningham and Turner are definitely capable, and I don't think there's really a very easy path for them to keep even both of them.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. I was reading a really good article from the AZ Central about that topic right there, and just what are some trade options, or what might force the hand of Phoenix to say, all right, I got the faith. Especially with the Taurasi injury, you have to think that you're kind of going into it with two game plans, one with DT and one without, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious how much. I don't know if you'd really ever get to them to admit this. Like, how much are they really like deep down like thinking like, yeah, we need a game plan if Diana can't play at all. Um, they I think like Cunningham, Turner, like these kind of players, like I think Turner makes it. I think Turner makes it pretty easy for them because I think they do need a center, like they do need somebody like looking towards the future. Like, do we know we can get 8 good minutes for someone behind BG like in the regular season? Because then with other stuff like they're loaded on the wing, and I think that's like kind of been like a little underrated and like in talking about them as a title contender because like they have a lot of vets, but like they're all good and like they all know like they know who they are, and um, if it comes to it, I think they can still play a pretty similar style even if Tarasi maybe like misses more time than we expect.
That's some interesting insight. Ben, tell us where people can find more of your work, where they can start following you, where they can stalk you.
I am on Twitter at Ben_Dull. I write for High Post Hoops, B-Ball Index, and the Basketball Writers. And I will be, we're kind of ramping up, doing a lot more on the Locked On Women's Basketball podcast. We're running through team by team season previews, bringing on a guest for each one of those. So that can be what to look for.
That's awesome. And Ben's definitely going to be on our pod much more during the season. As everyone knows, we at WNBAinsidr believe in the players of the W and its community deserve the same in-depth analysis and respect that men's sports receive on a daily basis. Please consider joining our Patreon community and show support for the hard work we do.